How's everyone doing? Great. I consider myself the luckiest person in the world because I think I have the best job in the world, and that's being a college professor. Every day, I have the opportunity to work with students and help them get a little bit closer to their dreams, which is my own dream. I teach in graduate study programs, and so the number one question that people usually have for me is, after getting a master's degree, where do I go from there? Do I go right to the workforce? Do I get another master's degree? Or do I get a doctorate? So as someone who runs a doctoral program, I often have a conversation with them about what doctoral degrees look like. Now, obviously, many of us know about the brand standard degree, which is the Ph.D., but as the world changes, so do other degrees change. So if you think about the Ph.D., which stands for Doctor of Philosophy, there's a number of different things that go into that degree. You're going to spend 3 or more years doing your own independent research. You're going to work with a faculty member who's an academic expert in your arena. You're going to write a dissertation that, as we like to say, is 200 pages of the last 3 years of your life, but usually talks about some unique idea that you have. And at that point in time, you become a doctor and you have kind of a de facto ticket to teach in any academic institution in the country. Now, the degree program that I run is called a DBA, which stands for Doctor of Business Administration. And a Doctor of Business Administration is very similar to a PhD. There are a number of similarities in the sense that they both are terminal degrees. You're a doctor for the rest of your life. You also do research, and you also work with faculty members. But one of the things about a DBA is the fact that you are becoming an expert in a very specific area of business. You also can use the degree for consulting, entrepreneurship, and also you are looking to research what is really a business problem. So usually when I'm speaking to someone, they say, well, why wouldn't I just get the PhD? It's more of a degree that everyone can recognize. It's more of a degree that I would get more money. It's more of a degree that I have a better chance of working at a university. Now, 10 years ago, I might have said that that is a very true statement. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is how the world is really changing. So let's look a little bit at the history of education. So it goes back to medieval Europe. So the first doctoral programs and master's programs happened in medieval Europe. Now back then, courses of study, they called those faculties. So the same way that we call a person who works in a college a faculty member, these different institutions used to have faculties. The major faculty was a faculty of the arts, and they also had a faculty of medicine, a faculty of law, and a faculty of theology. Now, once you went through a program at a medieval university, they had an intermediate degree after a certain amount of time, which would be our version of a bachelor's, and they had what was called a final degree. Now, at the final degree, that's where you'd be known as a doctor or a master. But they primarily just called you that so that you're in a position to be able to teach. It actually is a very different degree than the ones that we have at doctoral programs now. You never did your own independent research, you just really became an expert at a certain topic. They also give you something called a licentiate. A licentiate basically is a license that says you're able to teach. And so you get the licentiate immediately before becoming a doctor. But if you think about hierarchy in medieval times, this follows, right? You have a king, and that king basically gives things to the lords. He gives them money, he gives them protection. And the lords basically give tribute up to the king. Then the lords would give down to the knights, and the knights would give down to the peasants. So everything in medieval life is based on a caste system, where you have things that are flowing downward from those who have an abundance. But if you think about a number of different educational institutions, it's very similar. Most of the people I know, one of the reasons they like being a professor is it allows them to be what's called the sage on the stage. They get to stand out in front of students. They get to be the expert in front of students. But one thing I know, one thing I tell people in my different classes, is that every single person in this class is probably more intelligent than I am, because you've had all these bits and bytes of data from 3 different screens coming into your head, and I just learned by television or by a human being. But I believe I'm much smarter than you are because I can use that data to do what I want. So thinking about the way education has been, you kind of think about the funnel, right? You have all this knowledge, And that knowledge starts to funnel its way from professor to student, then student to the corporation or organization that they work for, and then on to other students. Now, obviously there's been a major disruptor in the last 25, 30 years of our world, and that's very simply the web. The information superhighway has made it possible to be able to upload content, to use personal computers to author our own content, to be able to have interoperable workflow where I can work on a project and send it to a friend that's over in Dubai to work on too. And because of the information superhighway, this has effectively changed education in our world. So I'll tell you, I've seen some things by 12-year-olds on social media that I thought that was brilliant, sometimes even more than something I've read in a journal article. And so now as educators, we need to put ourselves in a position not just to look at knowledge from the top down, but also look at knowledge from the bottom up, understanding that both of those parts of knowledge are equally important. So now what does this have to do with PhD versus DBA? And what does this have to do with the types of degrees that we get now? Well, if you think about some of the major reasons why people go through the process of getting these degrees, you know that most people understand that professors need to have a doctorate to have long-term, full-time employment at a university. So we know that in our current state, you need to get this sort of licensure. But we also know the fact that when you actually crunch the numbers, the added salary for having a doctorate is about 26% extra. There's a 26% premium of salary. There's about a 23% premium of salary for getting a master's degree and about a 14% premium of salary for getting a bachelor's. So that 3% of premium between master's and doctorate seems to be very small when you factor in that I might be spending 3 to 7 years of my life in a doctoral program, plus the debt that goes along with it. So also we understand that some of the folks who get the PhD or get another doctorate feel that they're overqualified, and actually that overqualification can lead to less satisfaction and less productivity. So we know there's the debt, and we know that there's no real incentive usually for someone to move through a PhD process quickly. Think about it from the standpoint of the university. The university exists also as a profit center, so if you can have me there for 7 years getting a doctorate and paying tuition, what is the incentive to get me through in 3 years? So that underlies why something like a DBA will sometimes make sense, because it does basically 3 things. The first thing it does is it makes you be an expert in your industry and solve a business problem at your job. So automatically it makes you more valuable at your own work, and you can use that value to ask for raises and ask for advancement. The second thing is, it's the type of degree that allows you to be an excellent consultant, because you're actually becoming an industry expert at whatever you study. The third part is it allows you to be an excellent entrepreneur, because now you understand how to analyze businesses, especially in your industry. So with those 3 areas, you can put yourself out there in the marketplace in your particular industry in such a way that you are a highly valuable commodity over and above what you are with your master's degree. So different programs like a DBA provide you with flexibility, because some of the DBA programs work part-time, so working adults can go part-time as well as having their job. It has a lot of relevance because you're working on real-life problems. You can actually use the degree to solve problems and therefore get paid for solving those problems. It's scalable because once I do one dissertation for a Doctor of Business Administration, I can use those results to solve other problems, and obviously there's the problem-solving component. With these different components together, it's clear that a Doctor of Business Administration will be the certificate or the credential of the 21st century. Thank you.